We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC, coming at you with another episode of Gators Breakdown. Of course, going through fall camp, and of course, it always happens. Some bad injury news, not as bad as it could be, but an injury scare with running back Montrell Johnson. We'll get into that. And we'll dive into Trey Wilson, claiming himself to be, and rightfully so, dangerous on the field. We'll get to hear from him. Heard a little bit last week of Billy Napier, offensive coordinator Russ Callaway, talking about getting Trey Wilson the ball, a number of touches, kind of having this pitch count of wanting to get the ball in his hands. We'll expand on that a bit as well. But plenty to get into. Also, Billy Napier on Elijah Badger, the transfer wide receiver from Arizona State. So heavy offensive episode here on Gators Breakdown. A lot of the news coming from that side of the ball right now. Of course, Ron Roberts did speak last week, trying to get around to implementing that, but offense kind of garnering the headlines right now. Some of it not so good because of the injury, but also expanding on Florida's best weapon in Trey Wilson. So everybody hit that like button right here if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform if you haven't done so yet. And then, hey, not much longer, just a few more weeks till that first game of the season. Get your Beat Miami shirt right there, gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. Other designs there as well to help us and support what we do right here on Gators Breakdown. But even more so, if you want to interact with some more Gator fans, do so on the Discord at Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description there. Some new members joining in. A lot of good conversation lately with fall camp starting there at Gators Breakdown Plus. One more time, link is in the description to get access to the Discord server, ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown. I know that's a big, especially with football season coming up. There'll be a lot more ads here on Gators Breakdown. So be sure if you want those ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown, you get access to those at Gators Breakdown Plus. So Billy Napier did speak to the media on Saturday, and it was around midday. And then right after the press conference, it started coming out that there was an injury to Montrell Johnson. So I'm not sure anybody at the press conference at the time had the info to ask Billy Napier about it. I don't even know how much he would have shared, but it eventually came out anyway. So he probably would have been asked. I just don't know if it had been out because it was literally not long after the press conference ended on Saturday that started getting word about Montrell Johnson. Didn't want to run with the rumors. I trusted the source and what was being said about the injury, but also wanted to confirm. I have a news background, of course, so look, the person who was telling me, I completely trusted him. But news background tells me, go get another source, go get confirmation somewhere else as well. So I did reach out to Florida and then put out, of course, the tweets and the article there confirming the injury there to Montrell Johnson. So severity, of course, is going to be the question. But the bad news, of course, to start fall camp, early in fall camp for Florida, Montrell Johnson suffered that minor knee injury in Friday evening's practice. He had a scope performed, and the status from Florida is he's week to week. And sources confirmed that the Gators Breakdown on Saturday, as well as other outlets out there as well. So, like I said, the word started coming out about midday after Billy Napier's press conference. So he wasn't asked about it, but it started coming out that Johnson would miss several weeks. So that's another reason reaching out to Florida to get some more clarity on the whole situation. So we'll see as we go along here the next few weeks about Montrell Johnson's injury status, if he's going to miss the opener versus Miami. Texas A&M's a couple weeks later as well, so early season big games for Florida. We'll see where Montrell Johnson's status is as we move along. So, of course, for Johnson, decided to return for his senior season to boost his NFL draft stock and was expected to have an increased workload, of course, this year after Trevor Etienne transferred to rival Georgia. Last season, Johnson admitted he didn't play his best as he had NFL on his mind, was trying to do too much, still led the team in rushing yards for the second consecutive season, 817 rushing yards, 5.4 yards per carry, 68 yards a game. Of course, splitting a ton of carries. Trevor Etienne about mirrored the same stats there from Montrell Johnson. 2 seasons in a row, those guys about mirrored the stats, but Johnson leading in the yardage category there for the Gators the last couple of seasons. Last season, Johnson scored 6 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 1 receiving. That 1 receiving being that with a screen pass against Tennessee. There were Graham Mertz does it to him at the very last second. Johnson breaks tackle on his way to the end zone. Caught a career high passes last year, 30 of them for 236 yards. And I don't want to overlook his ability as a pass catcher. You know, that's something these young guys will need to prove they can bring. While there is a lot of confidence that those guys can run the ball well, you know, Johnson, through his time at Florida, has become a more reliable pass catcher as well. So with no definitive timeline for Johnson's return, the running back room will have to rely on a lot of inexperience. You know, sophomore Trayon Webb, freshman Jaden Ball, Caden Daniels, and then redshirt junior Jacoby Jackson, you know, for this crucial early season stretch that includes the games versus Miami, Texas A&M, in 2 of the first 3 games. So, you know, Cam Carroll's name's getting thrown around a bit, but still, you know, hearing that he may not be ready as of right now. So you still have 4 deep here: Trayon Webb, Jaden Ball, KD Daniels, Jacoby Jackson. Webb's the only back in the group with experience. You know, playing in last season, playing 11 games as a reserve running back and on special teams, of course. Had 163 yards rushing, 26 attempts, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4 catches for 18 yards. So, look, this is a deep group on potential and nothing more right now. That's not to slam those guys. That's just the reality of the situation. I think we can like their talent, but it is all potential right now with no games being played. I like this group. I feel they will be good, but it is all potential at the moment. That's not a slam on them. You know, Webb, limited experience. But behind him, nothing as far as game experience. So, you know, I think there's plenty of reasons to be confident that, you know, for Napier and this is and in this area, he's got some recent history. Montrell Johnson playing a good bit as a true freshman at Louisiana. Of course, remember Trevor Etienne a couple seasons ago as a freshman here at Florida. If you prove you do enough to get on the field as a true freshman, Billy Napier will play you. And look, really don't have a choice right now because of the injury to Montrell Johnson. So I also think there should be confidence that those guys will be ready to go based on some recent history. The freshman running backs for Billy Napier, you know, his 2 main ones, Johnson back at Louisiana, Etienne at Florida, all ready to go. And we were all impressed by what we saw from Jaden Ball in the spring game. I was too. And there was positive word at the same time of KD Daniels, Jacoby Jackson coming out of spring. But we do have to see it. So probably the biggest area for concern for me is really not those guys running the ball, but it will be the pass blocking side of playing the running back position. Trevor Etienne did struggle there, but I do think that gets overblown a bit as a coping mechanism for losing him to Georgia. And it wasn't great, but, you know, it's funny to see many point it out now when they really weren't pointing it out as much when he was in the Florida backfield. So I think it gets overblown a bit. You know, if the game, I think for Florida's offense now, if the game plan has to shift, or if Florida was going to open up the offense even more this season, then the backs are going to have to be reliable pass blockers. While Napier has, you know, his base offense, and that's based more on the run game, as we discussed last episode, with having Callaway more involved in the offense, with recruiting more speed, bringing in Badger and DK through the transfer portal, I do believe this offense is evolving a bit to open it up more. So with that, you know, these running backs will certainly need to adapt quickly in pass blocking. For somebody like KD Daniels, you know, didn't have experience in that in high school, basically playing the running back, the quarterback position, but running the ball so much as a quarterback, there's going to be an adjustment period for those freshman backs. So how will Florida adjust? You know, we just discussed how they will in the running back room, but does the focus of the offense change? Yeah, I just talked about the adaptability, how you've recruited, what you did in the transfer portal. You know, does this force Napier and the offensive staff to open up the offense more? It certainly can, but it may have been there anyway. So last week, we discussed Napier's and offensive coordinators Russ Callaway's comments on feeding wide receiver Trey Wilson. And that's where we'll go next. You know, Montrell Johnson going to be injured. We don't know the timeline yet, but the offense is probably going to be opened up a bit more anyway. Your best playmaker is wide receiver Trey Wilson. The way you've recruited the other guys, the way you've hit the transfer portal, you certainly can see the vision there. And now we got the comments of Billy Napier, Russ Callaway last week about getting Trey Wilson the touches that he needs as a top playmaker in this offense. And certainly that may be even more critical now to help make up for the time Johnson may be out. So let's hear from Trey Wilson. He spoke to the media, and as he looks for a larger role in this offense this coming up season.
Yeah, Trey, so Billy the other day we were talking about how Russ Callaway talked about getting the ball to the best playmakers, and Billy said that you were at the top of the list there. What does it mean to you to establish that trust and belief, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, I most definitely don't disagree with him, but at the same time, it's a team game, and being able to give our team the best chance of the win, and drive down and get in the box as many times a game as we can. We'll give our team the best chance to win.
Well, again, how do you feel like you've gone about earning the belief and trust of your head coach and your teammates?
I feel like it's just kind of part of the process. Coming in early and then being able to be thrown on the field early. I feel like it was just kind of part of the process, being able to, not have too many setbacks and none of that.
You did so much last year from so many different positions. Where would you like to see? Where do you expect to see maybe the next evolution for you? Playmaker.
I'll say just, every day at practice, just being able to let the game slow down for me, being able to see all different perspectives from the field. And Coach Napier liked to, emphasize being a 40 Gator, which is pretty much seeing not just your position, but all sides of the ball, from, all the positions on the offensive side to all the positions and roles on the defensive side, so pretty much knowing all 22 assignments.
Are you closer to that? How much closer are you this year than last year?
A lot closer.
Yeah. Or is your head just spinning last year trying to figure out your own?
I'd say I was just out there running around, just following instructions, but now just kind of following my role.
How much do you think it helped you to be able to line up in such a kind of versatile way last year? You got some snaps out of the backfield and in the slot outside. What did that do to kind of help you develop?
Just keep defense on their toes and pretty much, apply pressure from all ways.
What's the key to him on the workload you're going to probably have this year?
It just keep strong in the mental game. A part of the aspect of the game is part of the mental, so being able to keep that strong is most definitely the most important part of it.
What have you learned, though, just about the whole aspect of recovery? And you're still really young. I'm sure you recover quickly.
Yeah.
But have you learned more since you've been here about what to put in your body, how to recover?
Yeah, especially after watching that Netflix documentary, Receiver, they kind of emphasize it a little bit as far as like being able to take care of your body. It's a whole part of the game as well. But I feel like I almost definitely picked up on that, especially from last year.
Yeah, what have you kind of added to the repertoire? The cold plunge doesn't look any fun, but I'm sure you're doing it. What are you doing?
I wouldn't say a lot of it is probably not fun, but at the end of the day, you got to take care of your body because that's your money maker.
You said last year you were just kind of running around. Should defenses be scared? Like last year you were as productive as you were just running around, and now in year two you kind of know what you're doing? Like how much better you're going to be?
Yeah, I feel like the defense is just going to watch the tape, and at the end of the day, they're going to have to, make their adjustments and feel the way they have to feel after watching our film. Do
you feel more dangerous in year two, knowing what you know?
Well, lining up, I feel the most dangerous every play, so.
Look, Trey Wilson should feel dangerous. Let's go back. Let's just go back and look at it. That productive freshman season, played in 10 games, 7 starts, 61 passes caught, 538 yards with a team-high 6 touchdowns. He led all FBS true freshmen in receptions per game with 6, while ranking second in overall receptions with 61. Tied for second in receiving touchdowns with 6, and fourth in receiving yards per game at 53.8. He recorded 41 catches for 370 yards in the last 6 games of the season, finishing with 538 receiving yards. Those stats came from Zach Alberverdi on 3, the comparisons of a freshman out there. But you saw, as the season went on, him get more comfortable in the offense. So those stats are even more impressive considering that, of course, he didn't arrive on campus until the summer. Then got to fall camp, was injured early in fall camp, missed a whole lot of the fall camp last season with an injury, and was still able to put those stats up. So he made significant strides in the offseason. That was a big part of his press conference as well. Says he added 13 pounds of muscle to his 5'10" frame thanks to Tyler Miles' new strength and conditioning program. And reflecting on his freshman All-American season, just going back one more time, Wilson says, I was just out there running around, just following instructions. So despite that, of course, the season was impressive. Not fully ingrained in the offense just yet, still learning the playbook, missing some time, and was still able to do that. So now adding muscle for durability this season, be able to stay healthy, be on the field more, gaining more experience in the offense, and being on the field more should help Wilson take his game to the next level. So something I wanted to look at, I saw those stats from Zach Alberverdi, and really good job by him there at On 3 to put those stats up. But one more I kind of wanted to go to is looking at the distribution of his catches. And we all remember those good starts, and then we wouldn't see Trey Wilson for a little while. And I do think there is something to that. So if you look at it, notably, 44% of his 61 catches were in the first quarter. And I don't think it's any secret or, I think in looking at it, it's the scripted portions of the offensive scheme. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think that's a reach there. I think we can say, just by looking at the breakdown, he had 27 of his 61 catches in the first quarter. 5 of his 6 touchdowns came in the first quarter. I don't think it's a far stretch to say during the scripted portions of the drive, the game plan is built around him. We saw how productive he was compared to the rest of the game. Ricky Pearsall, you can see, if I threw his up out here, if you're watching the YouTube version, he had 19 of his 65 catches in the first quarter, but it was distributed. For Ricky Pearsall, 19 in the first quarter, 12 in the second quarter, 18 in the third quarter, 16 in the fourth quarter. Trey Wilson, let's go back one more time, 27 in the first quarter, 12 catches in the second quarter, 11 catches in the third quarter, 11 catches in the fourth quarter. I mean, go back to Trey Wilson. He had 6 catches on the opening drive against Tennessee. Didn't have another reception the rest of the game as he injured his collarbone. He'd go on to miss the next 2 games against Charlotte and Kentucky. He had 11 catches against Georgia. 4 of those were on the first drive of the game, including 1 being the 25-yard touchdown catch and run. So you can see the trend was to script the early game plan around Wilson while he's adjusting to the college game, having to learn the playbook. I wouldn't expect to see such a drop-off in production from the first quarter to the rest of the game with Trey Wilson now having the experience, knowing more of the offense, having more muscle. He should be to be able to play more and more consistently. And then early word out of fall camp so far is making the plays you'd expect him to make. Pretty much unguardable the first week of fall camp. And then I hope you guys saw it. If you're watching the YouTube version, I'm going to throw it up here. I mean, the catch Florida released on Friday, I think it was from Thursday's practice. I mean, you talk about another step in his game. You see Mertz dropping back. Wilson with the hops over. Sharif Denson played it about as good as you could play it. But Trey Wilson showing the hops, getting up, coming down with the ball. I mean, that was something we didn't get to see much of last year. A lot of the plays last year, some of those pop passes, his yards per completion weren't very high as he's getting ingrained into the offense. We saw that get better as the season went on. So I think this year we should see him inside, outside, in the backfield, short, intermediate, down the field. I think he's going to be more of an all-around receiver this year. We didn't see many of these catches like this from Trey Wilson last year. He's going to be used in this fashion more this year. So certainly you can see, based off of that, I don't want to make too much of a deal about a fall camp big play here, but from a player like him that we were already expecting big things out of. As you can see here, to me, it looks like it's first-team offense versus first-team defense. I'm guessing. I did see Pup Howard on the field there in the background, Sharif Denson, who I expect to start at nickel. Could be a mix. I don't want to take too much of who he's going against, but Sharif Denson, I think, is going to start there. So, but you got your quarterback. Graham Mertz puts the ball where, turns out, only Trey Wilson can get it. So, look, as I said, don't want to make too much about it, but at the same time, those are the type of things you expect to see from Graham Mertz, Trey Wilson, their second year together here in the Florida Gator offense. So let's expand on the passing game a bit. Let's go back to the wide receiver room, somebody who's going to help Trey Wilson. So defenses can't just focus on him. You heard Wilson say, hey, defense is going to make adjustments. Well, he's going to need some help. Here's Billy Napier on transfer wide receiver, Elijah Badger.
He's a part of a receiver group, that is, man, it is extremely competitive. I think we have, after some of those guys that have played a lot of football, Trey, Chim, Khalil, then you kind of get into that next tier of player, and all those guys are doing great. And that's one of the positions on our team where some of the roles are to be determined. But I do think that Badger has made progress, and it showed up, I think, yesterday is where I was like, okay, I can kind of see, he is explosive. He is athletic. He can run after the catch. He has a vertical threat to his game. And he's got play strength, and he's got length. He's 6'1" guy, but he's got great length. So, I like the look in his eye. He's not scared to work. He's got a smile on his face. He told me last night, I could tell he was getting comfortable. He made a few plays, and I said, hey, he said, man, this is the humidity is different, right? He said, I'm used to that sun, but I'm not used to that humidity. So he said, hey, look, this practice is a lot more intense and a lot faster maybe than the ones I've been a part of in the past.
There we go. So it is going to be different for Elijah Badger, and getting comfortable is my main takeaway there from what Billy Napier had to say about Badger. And look, of course, getting comfortable in the weather too, it sounds like. So we all know living down here in the South, this humidity is a bit different. And I remember Graham Mertz talking about it last year as well, saying in the one-on-one interview I had with him about, swappy. The swap certainly is a great term for all the humidity you have to deal with here in our great state of Florida. So, but to me, getting comfortable for Elijah Badger, to me, that's the only question surrounding him. How fast can he get up to speed in this new offense for him to become comfortable and for him to become the weapon that I think we know he can be? It's not a stretch here to say Elijah Badger can be a huge weapon for this Gator offense. That's why he was so heavily coveted by for us following the transfer portal back in the spring. This was the guy that we as a fan base identified. We want him in this receiver room. We've seen it. But it's been proven elsewhere. He's played a lot of college football, played a lot of snaps. He has more production than someone like Ricky Pearsall, who also came in from Arizona State, made his presence felt right away, but he also was a better player in year 2 at Florida than year 1. Florida needs that impact right away this season from Badger. And it may not be there game 1 versus Miami, but it needs to be there early in the season. We'll see who the starting 3 wide receivers are when Miami comes to town, but there's a thought it will be Wilson, DK, and Khalil Jackson as Badger catches up. But I think if that's still the case, and I think that is going to be a battle of Jackson and Badger as we lead up to the first game of the season, early season as well, that Badger, before all is said and done, still needs to be at least third in the amount of touches the wide receivers get. Looking back at that chart from earlier, we know the staff will script plays to get an inexperienced player the ball in his hands. So if Badger's still trying to figure out the playbook early in the season, getting comfortable in the offense, I'd expect to see some manufactured touches. But it's going to be, for full effect, and for full effect early in the season, it's going to be up to Badger to get himself comfortable in the offense. But I think when it's all said and done, by the time the 2024 season ends, Badger's going to be in that group of Wilson, DK, as the top three. I'm not trying to slam Khalil Jackson. I'm glad, he's a Gator and making that transition from playing quarterback in high school to wide receiver. I expect him to be better in his second full season, getting experience as well. But given what we have already seen from Badger, I know it wasn't at Florida, and I know a lot of people will slam it's in the Pac-12 or whatever at Arizona State. Pac-12 been pretty good football to me lately. But he's done it. And he shows explosive. He showed, as you heard Billy Napier kind of explain, the all-around weapon he can be. It's catch after the run. It's being a vertical threat. There's a special teams threat there as well. So to me, it's just going to be all about how fast Badger can get ingrained in the offense. How fast can he learn the offense? Because I think he's a weapon just waiting to happen to help Trey Wilson, to help Chimere DK, to help Graham Mertz in this offense. And to wrap it back around, you're going to need these guys to help make up the loss for Montrell Johnson in the run game. There's a lot to like about that room still, but I still believe, Billy Napier is truthful in what he says about learning to adapt and learning to change. I do think changing your offense a bit is in that list of items. And I think we've seen the changes there by hopefully relying more on a Russ Callaway, getting more speed on the field with Wilson. Chimere DK certainly setting personal records this offseason. And then the recruitment of guys like Tank Hawkins, Abrams. You can see the vision there. I've put that out there before. But you can see some changes in the offense. Now, hopefully, we'll be able to make up for whatever the timetable is for Montrell Johnson. It may not be anything. We'll see when it gets to it. But probably expect him to miss a game or two early in the season. So you're going to need this passing game to step up even more. All right, there you go. Like I said, heavy offensive influence episode here of Gators Breakdown, bringing you the latest. The unfortunate news, Montrell Johnson going down with an injury, hopefully not too serious when it's all said and done. And then expanding on this offense with the receivers of Trey Wilson and Elijah Badger. I expect to hear their names a whole lot this fall for the Gators. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.